Okay, here we go. Well, I will just introduce myself. So my name is Laurel Downs. I'm here with my supervisor, Lee Greenwood, and we are the Don't Move Firewood team. And we are going to talk today about our campaign overall, what we do, the materials we have, the services we provide, some big ticket outreach initiatives, and of course, how you can get involved. So thank you for everybody who got up early to join us this morning. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, this is meant to be very interactive, kind of informal. So please feel free throughout if you have any questions or want to jump in and share something that you've experienced on this front, please feel free to do so. And then we will also have plenty of time at the end for discussion. So Lee, do you want to get us started?
Sure thing. I put my tree background up for us today. So good morning from Montana. So my name's Lee Greenwood. I run the Don't Move Firewood campaign as the Forest Pest and Pathogen Program Manager for the Nature Conservancy at large. So it's one of several different parts of forest pests that I am in charge of, and Laurel is the exclusive firewood outreach coordinator. So all she does is firewood. And we are here today to ensure that you guys understand all the different services that we offer. So next slide, please. So as we see it, for firewood is a very broad pathway for invasive forest insects and diseases. There's all sorts of different things that can be accidentally transported from place to place by the public or by commercial movement of firewood. And it's really well established that forest pests can and do move on firewood throughout North America and certainly around the world as well. Unfortunately, in the US as well as in Canada, the regulations on the movement of firewood exist, but they are not comprehensive across geographies, nor are they in any way consistent by what types of wood, what types of movement, what types of pest, or basically any part of the different regulatory structures. So there's a lack of consistency and there's a lack of comprehensiveness to the regulatory structure on firewood. And on top of all of that, new pest outbreaks come to light just about every year. We don't mean necessarily that new species are found every year, but new incidences of pests are absolutely happening all the time. So the dynamic of what firewood should be considered not wise to move in a really dramatic way. So for instance, the new finding of emerald ash borer in Oregon last summer really complicates the public's as well as the professionals' ability to communicate the importance of not moving firewood. Next slide. So in order to tackle all of this, we try to take it from a really broad perspective, and these are the guiding principles that we use. We have a goal that is not actually firewood related. Our goal is to protect trees from forest insects and diseases. And the tactic that we choose, because it's within our ability to tackle it, essentially, is to slow the spread of invasive forest pests via the firewood pathway. That's an area of expertise that the Nature Conservancy has developed for pushing 15 years now. And we have the resources and the know-how to take it on. And so that is the tactic that we choose. The target for our messages and campaign is twofold. We want to target all firewood users within North America because they are the ones that need to get this message. But furthermore, because we cannot literally meet and greet every single person who's going to move firewood in North America, we have a major target to reach people like everyone on this call. So anyone who is a group educator or a professional in the space of firewood or forest pests that needs information or resources or continuing education, the target is you. And in order to communicate all of this, we use best practices and messages that we know are going to resonate with people. And those messages have two different levels. One is the basics that you're not supposed to move firewood. That's the name of our campaign, Don't Move Firewood. But for that message to actually work, you need to have positive, action-oriented messages that people can understand what they should be doing. And what they should be doing is one of the three different options we provide. Either they should be buying it where they'll burn it, or they should be gathering it or collecting it on site where that's feasible and permissible by the landowner, or they should be buying certified heat-treated firewood in the markets where it's available, which is by and large the eastern half of the United States, as well as some of eastern Canada. Next slide. All right, I'm going to hand it back to Laurel. You're on mute, Laurel.
It's bound to happen. It's bound to happen. Thank you, Lee. I'll be talking about our materials and some of our bigger outreach initiatives and partner collaborations. So all of our materials pretty much can be found on our website, don'tmovefirewood.org. We have a lot of great content in the resource library, and this is a place where you all can check out and pull things directly from there if you need them, or you can use it as inspiration for your own outreach materials. Or you can even reach out to us and show us something that you think is useful, and then we can have it customized for you. And I'll talk more detail about that in a little bit. As Lee mentioned, we have those two targeted audience, so firewood users and stakeholder groups such as yourselves. And so the firewood map is useful for both groups, but it's really targeted towards the public and the firewood users in general. And so what we've done here is we've taken every single state and province, looked at any applicable regulations in those areas, broken that down into layperson's terms, and included it as just a really succinct, short and sweet piece of information that folks can go to and find out the situation in their state or, you know, wherever they're traveling. And then we also have just best practice information there, any pests of concern, and then any outreach materials or links from the state agencies themselves in those areas. So it's a really great place for, again, anyone who's just trying to get a really brief snapshot of the situation in those states to go and find that out. And this is something that we should try to keep as updated and accurate as possible. I know that I see some familiar names. I know there's people in this call that I have emailed and bugged to try to make sure that our material is reflecting the actual situation in these places. And so that is something that I'm trying to keep accurate all the time. So please reach out to me if anything new pops up, or if you notice something should be changed or altered in any way to be as accurate as possible. I'm happy to do that. We also have a lot of information on the forest pests and pathogens themselves on our site. We have a news site. We have 10 of our most popular web pages translated into Spanish to make a Spanish language microsite. And as I mentioned, we have a lot more resources for fellow educators and any of our partners who are looking to raise awareness on the firewood pathway issue. One of the most recent tools that we've done is the firewood comparison report, which I'll definitely talk more about if you're unaware of that. And I'm going to change my own slide here. So as far as some big ticket outreach events, Firewood Month is October. And so we're currently in our baby of an outreach initiative, and I will get more detailed about that. But there are a lot of different events throughout the year that we are involved with. Most of them are spearheaded by other groups and partners of ours. And it just kind of keeps the conversation, you know, relevant to whatever's going on throughout the year, or pest focused, just kind of, you know, spices it up a bit and targets different audiences as appropriate. So Play Clean Go Week is a big one that we get involved with. Emerald Ash Borer Awareness Week, we actually put on some webinars this past May for that, and they're on our YouTube channel. And so we just try to mix it up a bit and support our partners with these different outreach events. And those same partners really help us out and amplify our message during Firewood Month, which is amazing. And so we have an entire toolkit with strategies and just different tips for outreach during this month, as this is a beautiful time of year in a lot of places of the country, and it's just a great opportunity to raise awareness on this issue. What we do is we break it down into 4 different weeks, to again just kind of have slightly different messaging and targeted audiences. We started off pretty broad with the first week, talking about the general issues of forest pests that use the firewood pathway. We get a little bit more specific, targeting different recreation groups during the second week, specifically like hunters, fishers, or fishermen, and people who go RVing, camping, those who travel to look at the beautiful foliage, all those sorts of fall activities. We just try to keep the message of responsible firewood use involved in that. This does overlap with Fire Prevention Week as well, so we tend to have a post on that. The third week, we will focus some of our messaging on the forest industry and talking about firewood as an important commodity in that regard, bringing home the message that, you know, trees are not only important intrinsically, but they also have a pretty important role to play as our natural resources and the services they provide in that regard. And everyone has a role to play in protecting those resources, because this actually does go hand in hand with National Forest Products Week. And then we bring it home with the last week of October, talking about those who use firewood to heat their homes or cabins. So we'll focus on those folks a little bit. And then of course, this is the same time as Halloween, and we have some pretty awesome firewood masks as a fun activity, usually for kids to get involved this time of year with that. And those sort of resources are in our resource library as well, as if you're interested in checking that out. So back to the firewood comparison report as a tool that's very helpful for anyone in the forest health professional community. This was a pretty large undertaking of ours. I think early last year is the first time we came out with a version of this report, and we've since had several republications as things have changed. This was born out of the federal deregulation of emerald ash borer. So as many of you know, that really kind of changed the regulatory environment in the United States, and we wanted to get a handle on what that regulatory environment looked like in the aftermath, not only for emerald ash borer, but really for any quarantine that affects firewood. So firewood specific ones, as well as pest quarantines under which firewood is a regulated article. So it's really a one-stop shop for any information on that. We even dive into the certification ability among states to certify their kilns and get the heat treatment of firewood going for the firewood industry. And then we, you know, being an outreach campaign, we really focus on the outreach status across the United States as well, and just kind of get a comparative look among the different states and regions of, you know, what that outreach looks like and how we can help improve it. And Lee, if you wouldn't mind, I don't know if you've already put it in the chat, the landing page for that, in case folks want to check that out. It's a lot of information. It's filled with links to the actual legal documents and everything else. So the appendices break down everything by state if you want to just look at your state, and that reads everything, and that kind of makes that easier there. The big takeaway from this report is that there are a lot of inconsistency, as has been kind of the theme of this talk. Not only in regulations, which we would expect some inconsistencies, of course. Different regions have different issues and different species of concern, different, you know, legislative capabilities. So that makes sense. But again, just having that information in one place, I think, is really helpful. So as that relates to the firewood industry, of course, that complicates things a little bit. Certain states have the ability to certify firewood, others don't. Kind of giving this hodgepodge look of what's going on where. And then the outreach environment is also pretty inconsistent as well. And so that's kind of what I'm going to focus the rest of my little spiel on as far as the firewood comparison report goes. Our big push for outreach is to, you know, have that preventative factor. So reaching people before they make the decision to move firewood or not. Is outreach important at physical locations and campgrounds? Yes, absolutely. The wording for that outreach might vary a little bit because, again, at that point, someone already has made the decision to bring firewood or not to a certain place. So in order to reach people, before they make those decisions, before that firewood is moved, you have to raise awareness on it and give them the opportunity to mitigate that behavior. And you do that by a comprehensive online outreach environment. And so we looked at every single state, all the agencies within those states for firewood communications. We looked at cooperative extension for every state, and then we took a fine-tooth comb to state parks and state park reservation process, because as many of you know, oftentimes a third party is used for the actual reservation portal for these public lands. So what we are looking for, what we love to find for as far as firewood communication goes in these places is really, eye-catching, best practice information, or of course, if there is a regulation that's involved, wording that reflects that. But not only, telling folks what not to do, but again, as Lee said, coupling that message with clear instructions and can-do positive wording of what they should do. So bullet points are great, short lines, do this, and having it very context dependent, of course, based on the situation in any places. But really we're looking for this information on any and all web pages that make sense to have them. And we're kind of treating this as information that should be available so ubiquitously and repetitively, because people are often not looking for it. And a lot of the public still doesn't know about this pathway. So you're trying to reach those people who are looking for information on, the campsites themselves, trying to look for information if they can bring their dog or how much it's going to cost. Like, we want them to come across this firewood information in those same places. Even such places as like forest health pages, insects and disease pages, anywhere it's relevant. It's really best to have this firewood communications. And again, just increase the chance that you're going to reach people who don't know about it and be able to get them to mitigate that behavior. So what does this look like? As I mentioned, it's not that consistent across the United States. One thing that most states do have is they have at least one state agency that has highly visible firewood communications, which is excellent. This tends to be the State Department of Agriculture, which makes sense because this is the legislative body behind a lot of regulations under which firewood is a regulated article. So that's excellent. What we just hope is to then have that same communications mirrored in these other locations that your average firewood user is more likely to visit. So again, those outreach sites like cooperative extension, as well as really importantly, any entity that has to do with campings and on public lands. So state parks, reservation portals. And there's definitely a lot of room for improvement there. And one thing that we're doing as a result of this report is we're able to see now where we can target our efforts for other stakeholder groups and educators, to show them like, hey, look at this report, you're doing great here, take that same information and just put it here, here, and here. And what we've done recently is we've done some calls with states who are interested in improving their outreach and having a similar presentation like this, but then going into really the nitty gritty. And just, I've pulled up screenshots of, their websites, what they have, and then the places they don't have, and then giving them the wording, and they can just copy and paste it or change it however they want. And honestly, just trying to make your lives as easy as possible, because I know regulations is tough, whether or not you think it's even necessary to have a regulation is one thing. And then if you can even pull it off, that's all pretty dicey and that's tough. But what's not tough is just putting in a few lines to, again, just like amplify this message, get out this outreach, and just slow the spread as much as possible. Even in places where it might be inevitable for things like emerald ash borer to come, biting yourself that time and giving you the opportunity to get prepared for that. You know, a lot of places are left somewhat vulnerable with that federal rescindment of the Emerald Ash Borer regulation. And so, you know, having strong, powerful outreach is just really, it's only gonna be good. So happy to work with anyone who's interested in doing that. And again, just making your life easier on the outreach front. So I will finish up my little spiel here with our partner collaboration highlights. You know, a big part of our work is supported and enhanced by other groups such as Hungry Past, Play Clean Go, from NASMA. A lot of different people are doing really great work on the forest pest invasive species front, and we are happy to amplify their message, and they do that for us as well, and so we're very grateful for that. Also, as I mentioned before, as far as customizing graphics, so we work with state, tribal, regional partners all the time to get our graphics to represent their specific situations. So landscapes, specific wording, logos, QR codes, pests of concern, all of that good stuff we can customize for anyone's specific needs, and we're happy to do so. That is a free service we provide. The only associated costs were to be if you wanted something physically printed, you know, you cover the printing, but as far as design, we have you there. Any other organizations that deal with firewood, we are happy to work with and, you know, give them the opportunity to use our materials and our experiences to kind of have the best outreach possible. Firewood Scout is one of them. They do some great work with showing people in different states, local vendors, trying to keep that firewood as local as possible. A recent one we're also working with is the Federal Firewood Banks program. They recently had a virtual summit, and Lee gave a great presentation there to just kind of keep that message of the firewood pathway relevant in their programs and the awesome work that they do. So these are just kind of examples, but as I mentioned, we are happy to work with anyone who's interested in raising awareness on the firewood pathway, and again, just trying to improve that outreach all over North America. That's our job. So I think that's it for me. And then Lee, I know you wanted to talk about paid advertising.
Absolutely. So throughout the year, one of the ways that the Don't Move Firewood campaign reaches its largest possible audiences is through a system of different types of paid advertising that complements all of our unpaid promotional efforts. And so I'm going to take everyone through a very quick rundown of how that works. So number one, we have what's called a Google AdWord grant, which is an in-kind donation from Google's philanthropic group. And this is a common thing for people to try to get because it offers a lot of free advertising space over time if you can manage it well. So it's actually quite high maintenance, but it's very high reward. So we manage a Google AdWords grant throughout the year. I think in recent years, we've varied between $30,000 and $60,000 of in-kind donated advertising money. So it's substantial. We also do banner ads when we have, okay, so that is an in-kind donation from Google. Everything else below that on the list here is a funded through a grant or cooperative agreement. So we only conduct the rest of the advertising when we have the funding available to do so. So for instance, we do website banner ads, which are the small ads that, depending on the website, sometimes are annoying and sometimes are fairly well designed, that show up at the bottom of different websites of all types. Banner ads can be highly targeted to audience. So for instance, we can pick and choose what types of demographics of people or what types of private businesses have advertising spaces that we use. We would choose from applicable demographics. So for instance, I know that we have a lot of success with hunting and fishing related websites. Those have really good click-through of our ads, which means people are actually paying attention to them. So those are digital banner ads on selected sites. We also have a Facebook account where Laurel manages our day-to-day unpaid posting, which in the language of Facebook is organic posting. So Laurel does all the organic posting. So you may have seen those posts coming and going through the days. But in addition, when we have funding, we also run Facebook ads and Facebook promoted posts. Those are two different types of paid promotional efforts within Facebook. So essentially, we run 3 different types of Facebook pieces of the campaign. Only one of them is not supported by advertising funds. The other 2 are supported by advertising funds. We also, through the years, have done a substantial amount of print publication advertisements with funding from USDA APHIS through their Emerald Ash Borer program. And those print publications, 2 of them are actually shown here. I believe we used both of those for that specific purpose. And so you can see those have our logo, our wording, site-specific information. They are in typically travel guides and associated types of annual publications like the Old Farmer's Almanac or RV magazine. So we're trying to really get those print advertisements in front of people that are highly likely to be interested in firewood or camping, especially camping in regions of concern where emerald ash borer would be particularly problematic. So if you would like to make sure that emerald ash borer is less likely to, for instance, reach, we'll use Oregon again as an example, then the Oregon Travel Guide itself, which is an annual publication, has been getting a print advertisement that says, don't bring firewood to Oregon through this program. So that's how we do print publications. And that is when we have funding available only. Print especially is quite high ticket price wise. So that's a substantial investment when we have it. And then we do other projects when we have funding available. Sometimes that funding is through other entities. So for instance, let's see, the North Dakota at one point had some funding and asked for advertisements that were our paid advertisements, but they had a funding source to place them. So we placed ads in, I think it was North Dakota's hunting and fishing guide, as well as the Visit North Dakota. All of the Visit state guides have different names, and I don't honestly remember the name of all of them. But I'm pretty sure there was one for North Dakota specifically that we placed in last year as an example. So when those funds come available, the folks that, whether it's a state or a federal or private person who has funding to place an advertisement in a valuable location, we provide them with the digital art, like Laurel said. And in this case, instead of physically printing it, the entity will pay for the placement of it in the print location. So the magazine, the travel guide, whatever it might be. All right, next slide, please. All right, this is perfect because it segues us to thank our primary funding entity, USDA APHIS PPQ, for continued financial support of our work. We could not do this without substantial federal support every year. And we absolutely value our partnership with APHIS in so many ways, not just for funding, but also for advisement and connections. And this webinar has better attendance just because our federal friends made sure to promote it since last week. So we really appreciate everything that they do for us. If you would like to find us, you can reach me or Laurel at the emails below. And despite it being an early start this morning over here in Montana, where I live, we have completely nailed the timing of this webinar. 30 minutes of presentation and 30 minutes of question and answer, which I'm really excited about. So congratulations, everyone. Now you get to ask Laurel and I whatever you want about firewood and forest pests. So couple sort of housekeeping, as you say, notes. You can take yourself off of mute and ask a question. If you're in a place that's loud or crazy or your microphone is the worst, you're free to just write it in the chat, and either Laurel and I will read it out loud, because the chat is not shown in the final video version that we will post onto YouTube. So we'll just read chats as they come in if they are questions, so that that doesn't sort of seem strange in the recorded video.
Yes, thank you for that caveat.
So there you go.
Anthony has asked, what is our readership?
Anthony, can you be a little more specific? Readership in what format or metric? We maintain a ton of metrics, so I'm just curious which one you're asking about. And I can talk about some of our metrics, although it's difficult to do some of them off the top of my head because we do have a lot. Oh, general audiences. Okay. One of the nice things about digital communications, whether it's Facebook or the banner ads or whatever, is we can actually really closely target those to the people that we think most need to receive our message. And so, for instance, with our banner ads campaign that we've done for a few years now, because we had good funding for it, we were able to specifically target the banner ads only to states on the western leading edge of the emerald ash borer infestation. So if you sort of imagine a squiggly line down the United States, roughly-ish to the west of the Mississippi, but not precisely, we just picked the states north to south there and only sent banner ad money essentially to show up in computers in space there. So in that case, I'm not telling you a number of our readership because, to be frank, I cannot remember it off the top of my head. But what I am going to say is that we know that all of the readership that we got of those particular banner ads was from the targeted states where people would be more or less most likely to take firewood from infested emerald ash borer forest or backyard westward into an uninfested, leap forward past the former federal quarantine area, uninfested area. So we were very careful to target that. We reach millions of people a year. We have lots of different metrics of understanding those people. And also digital campaigns have lots of different ways to measure things called impressions, which is how many times a thing showed up. Reach, which is essentially how many times it's likely somebody saw it. Click-through rate, which is a fraction of how many times it got a click versus how many times somebody probably saw it, which obviously not everybody who sees something clicks on it, et cetera, et cetera. Our impressions rate, which is the largest of all rates because it's every time anything showed up, is often in the millions, multiple millions. So in a given year, it might be between like 3 and 10 million for our campaign, but are more selective and I would say more indicative of performance rates are smaller than that because not everything that shows up is seen and not everything that is seen is clicked. So it's a few million probably has an impactful view, but it's highly variable by year because our funding is highly variable by year and we are able to extend our functional sort of viewership, readership, educational footprint with greater funding, as anybody would suspect. All right, so let's go to the next question. Brittany asks, is there a certain ad campaign or messaging that's gotten us the best return on investment? That's a great question. It's very difficult for us to know what returns on investment look good versus are actually leading to behavior change. But I will say it's very obvious that one of our best performing types of messaging is insects. When we show pictures of insects, we get some of the best comments and click-throughs and general results of any of our online campaigns. And actually, Laurel, can you click back to the 2 poster slide? It might be 1 or 2 back. I forget. Yeah, this one. So for instance, this log advertising piece that has multiple insects on it, that is a variation of a design originally used in Missouri, where we got permission to use it because it was such a smart idea, and we loved it. And this print advertisement reflects the knowledge of how our online advertisements with photos of insects perform the best. So we're trying to, adaptively use the knowledge that we get by high volume methods like online advertising to more amorphous types of advertising like print, where you can't get there's no click-through of a print ad. Of course, you don't know how it performs, but we do know that insects and diseases perform really well. So messaging that gets the best return on investment from likely sort of attention grabbing approach, I would say it's pretty clear that featuring the forest insects and diseases of concern is the thing that gets us the best performance. Elizabeth Barnes asks, do you have a sense of which groups of people tend to be most resistant to the Don't Move Firewood message? That's a great question. I know I about 6 or 8 years ago, my memory is failing me at this exact moment, the state of New Hampshire did this great survey that basically was just designed to help them better understand firewood user behavior in the state of New Hampshire. And they found this very funny result, which is that one of the reasons that people in New Hampshire move firewood is because their firewood is the best firewood, as they report. So they have this opinion that their firewood is the best firewood. And one of the things that we have seen completely reflects that New Hampshire report, which is that people who have the means to move firewood, so a large vehicle essentially, and a supply of firewood in their backyard, in their possession, that they know is clean and dry in their opinion. So this is in their head. They know it's clean and dry and ready to go, and it's the best firewood because that's how they feel about it. That connection of firewood ready to go and a vehicle that can easily move it with plenty of space is very problematic. That doesn't mean that those people are the least likely to get our message, but to Laurel's point early in our presentation, we've got to reach those people with something that is compelling before they make the choice to pick up that firewood out of their backyard and put it in that vehicle. So resistance sort of is like almost like a political and sociological question, but we know the most problematic combination of people, no matter whether they're resistant to the message or not, are people whose firewood is in their backyard, ready to go into a bigger vehicle. So it's not precisely answering your question, Elizabeth, but it's close, I think.
I would just add to that a little bit. This is something that we think about a lot, and we think about our wording a lot as well, because not only to not, create more resistance, but also to not encourage other sort of I don't know, militaristic framings and just other sort of negative ways to view, the message itself. And so we're very careful to keep things positive and action oriented. We do a lot of posts with kind of like protective language, because that seems to do pretty well, and it reaches broad groups who might have very different views politically and, just worldwide views. And so we try to keep things kind of unbiased in that sense. And we're doing some A/B testing, and we have a lot of data that we need to sift through and work out. But right now we're trying to use the same image, because to Lee's point, a lot of times it's the image itself, especially if it's a really cool close-up of, spongy moth or Asian longhorn beetle, or just like something that's visually striking. We use that same image and then we'll just change the wording. So we might use some sort of objective, sort of fact-based or science language for one of our posts and do that protective emotional language for another. And so we're both really interested in seeing the results of those and seeing which has more reactions and engagement and reach. And we'll probably be doing some presentations once we go through all that and analyze the results. So
yeah, and language framing is really important, especially in social media. So we have seen a lot of moments where the language we use in the past, we've used language that accidentally sort of shunted the conversation on social media in the wrong direction. So you don't want a conversation about forest insects and diseases to become political. That's not productive. Nobody is going to actually learn anything from that experience. What you want, like Laurel was saying, when we use protective language, that means like the message might be protect your trees from forest pests, or, keep trees healthy in the campgrounds you love. So these are protective, sort of positive, fairly anodyne, neutrally acceptable messages to everybody. Nobody's like, oh yeah, I should cut down all the trees in my favorite campground. Like, that's absurd, right? So these are generally acceptable messages. And we use those instead of things that could easily take the conversation in a counterproductive direction. So finger pointing, sometimes we do get outright like negative or just kind of wild conspiracy theories. Those are not productive. We don't want to encourage that. So we really encourage a lot of either sort of warm, positive messages about protecting the places you love and the trees you love and the going somewhere and having a great time camping, or these insect-based images and messages, which we found really resonate, and they're scientifically accurate, and they, generally speaking, don't go in a counterproductive direction online. So the next one I see was Brittany has a follow-up questions, and she asks, actual photos perform better than created graphics of the same insects? We have only used actual photos for our testing of this. We actually haven't coupled photos versus like cartoons or kind of infographics specifically in this testing. So actually I can't answer that for you. I don't know the answer to that.
that might be a cool idea to try though in the future.
It is a really cool idea. We don't know. And we have been testing this two different frameworks, like Laurel said, of one photo with everything held identically except for the wording below the photo. It would be fascinating if we could do follow-up testing, if we had appropriate funding to do so, of, for instance, an actual photo versus some sort of a graphical art photo, and then the same wording. So basically reverse the question of what works best. So we don't know the answer to that one. Great. Okay. Trisha, Anthony says he didn't see the earlier request. No problem. Okay. Trisha says, great presentation. I like the new social media posts. Thank you, Trisha. Laurel is an absolute master of all sorts of different graphical arts. Like her, your use of, is it Canva is the utility? So
yeah,
Laurel
I've been having fun with Canva.
Yeah. Do you want to actually
Thank
talk
you.
about Canva? Because a lot of the folks on this group probably have information officers that might want to learn about it or themselves do social media posts. You want to talk about
Yeah.
number two?
I wasn't aware of it until one of our colleagues in New York on TNC chapter directed us towards it. Canva is just this great website. I think you can have, there's free versions and then paid versions. But they have just a litany of different photos and graphics and text available. They just do everything. They make making graphics fun. And so I've played around with that quite a bit recently. And that's what we've been using for a lot of our graphics, which Lee, I was thinking about, like some of the more popular ones we should probably add to the resource library. So if other people want to use them, they could. But yeah, that's been great. And it's just like I'm not very tech savvy at all. And I've had a really easy time playing around with Canva. So
I'm going to push back. You're very tech tech savvy. So nonsense.
I'm getting better. I just don't feel, I mean, my background's in wildlife and being out in the field and outside. And so like, playing around on with like computers and different websites to do this sort of thing is kind of new territory for me, but I'm definitely having fun with it.
So that speaks to an important thing, which is that Canva's strength is that it's really approachable. So whether or not you feel ready to use Canva, you are ready to use Canva. It's just a utility, like Laurel said, you can pay for it or you can get a free version. And some of the really fun, goofy new graphics that we've been using, Laurel has created directly from Canva. And they work really well to create variation in our social media posts. So one of the things that we try to do is make sure that our social media is a leader in ideas, variation, seasonal themes. We want folks like everyone on this call to be able to go to our social media account and be like, oh, that's a great idea. Or just, directly share, or you can even pull things right off our media and post them onto yours. We do not copyright our materials. It is all essentially public domain. We are 99% funded at this point by USDA APHIS right now. And so it would actually be inappropriate for us to hold back, I would say, all of our materials because we are public funded. So it's really important to spice things up with fun graphics, whether those are photos or other things. I put the link in the chat, so if anybody wants to just click through.
One thing we missed was Anthony asked, can you also share any success stories that have resonated with you and your staff? I think this one's tough because it's really hard for us to know all the times that our messaging did change someone's behavior and all the pest infestations that haven't happened because of our materials in our campaign. And so, but what I will say is, for me, at least in my experience recently, I don't do many things in person. We work for the entire North American region. And so it's not like we're in just one state and we can go out to different outreach events and expos and stuff. But I think I was going a little stir crazy, and Lee let me go to an outreach expo recently in a place near, I'm in Pennsylvania, and it was just across the border in New York pretty much. And I was able to wear our emerald ash borer costume and do some public outreach at a big invasive species expo up there, and actually talk to people from the community face to face, which is, again, not something I get to do very often. And I noticed that everybody received it well. And I would say that probably about a third of people were not aware of the forest pest and firewood pathway spread issue. And so it was really nice to see that light bulb go off in people's eyes and have them respond in a positive way and just be like, oh, I didn't realize that. And then in New York, they have great regulations and they have a lot of certified firewood available everywhere. And so I was telling them about that. And where can I get, that sounds like fancy firewood. Where can I get that? And it was so great to be like, I got this at the gas station a half a mile away. This is available a lot of places. And just, again, to just kind of raise that awareness in real time was really awesome to see. So I know that our online materials are doing the same thing, but a lot of times we don't have the opportunity to get that feedback in person. And so that was really nice.
Yeah, and on that note, Laurel is headed out on another road trip next week to the annual Lymantria Dispar Review, where she'll have information. And Laurel, I don't recall, are you giving a presentation?
Yes, I am. I'm giving a presentation just about firewood communications, and I'll probably talk about the firewood comparison report more as well. So
excellent. So I highly recommend anybody who will be at the ALDR, please make sure you come and visit Laurel and shake her hand and tell her that she's doing an amazing job representing the Don't Move Firewood campaign. It is true, we can't be everywhere all at once. Through the years, I have gone to various different events, and now Laurel, as the full-time coordinator, is able to go to a few events. But in order to accomplish our core goal, to get back to sort of Anthony's point of what are some good success stories, we need to reach people in their homes and change their minds at a moment of decision making. And one of the things that we've been able to do now that Laurel is working on this full time is give custom presentations to states as to how to create a more thorough and consistent outreach environment for people in the digital realm, so that they're more likely to change their mind in their home. And we did one for Arizona that was incredibly well received. During the course of that presentation, which had, gosh, I don't remember, maybe 25 different representatives of Arizona state agencies and sort of different like professional groups. Through the course of that, we started getting we started getting friendly requests that we do an identical presentation for New Mexico, because it was just so helpful to see what Laurel had done. Is like, all right, guys, on the City of Phoenix website, you could really improve your woody debris messaging with regards to firewood, so that people know, on the Arizona Fire and Forest Management website, everything already looks really good. Let's use this as a positive example of how firewood outreach should look for other agencies in Arizona, and so on and so on. I think those incredibly concrete presentations to highly motivated groups, like the different state agencies that were coming together with the Arizona Emerald Ash Borer Working Group, and they requested this presentation from us, is so helpful. We did a similar, although slightly toned back version yesterday for the state of Washington at their Urban Forest Pest Summit that they're holding yesterday and today. And then in follow-up from those presentations, what Laurel can do and has been doing is creating essentially just a PDF from that PowerPoint presentation that literally you can send to an information officer and say, hey, on slide 6, can you please implement this change that was suggested by the Don't Move Firewood campaign? So it's absolutely zero complication. You see it, if you like it, oh, there's the website, there's the new message. This would improve our outreach environment. Let's go. So I think that's a huge success story that we're able to do those state by state custom campaigns. Anthony Manson-Hang would love to see some of those success stories on our platform. That's a great idea, that we should maybe start putting these directly up onto our news site, which used to be called a blog, but the term blog is kind of old-fashioned. So we're calling it news. Thank you so much for the idea. Laurel and I should think about how we can incorporate that in the future so that people can see those new presentations and some other successes on the news site and share them. Yeah. We will post this webinar both on the news site as a link, as well as onto YouTube, so that if you have a colleague that you wish was here, you can point them in the right direction for it. And if anybody feels inspired by the fact that we've been doing these state by state detailed analysis of every single website that would reach the public productively, please reach out to me or Laurel and talk to us about what sorts of inspiration you have and how we can help you make it real.
Yeah.
We have 5 more minutes for any other questions, comments, kudos, requests for guidance. And then we're all going to go on to whatever we have planned at the hour. I see we have a good geographic spread on names. Some folks I recognize and some folks I don't, but if you are willing to if you haven't already and you're willing to put your name and your affiliation in the chat, that'll just help us know where everyone's from when we do an analysis of who's being reached by these webinars.
And thank you for everybody who participated today and who showed up.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Trisha, and thank you, everyone. Elizabeth, too. Laurel, do you want to just flip the slides to our contact information in case somebody needs a last-minute reminder?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, thanks for all the kudos on the presentation. We hope that it makes this, our materials a lot more not presentable. Oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Approachable. We hope it makes our materials a lot more approachable so that you know what we have to offer. You know that Laurel and I are here for you. And you know that we have a ton of things in archives and PDFs and best practices and examples and so forth. So anyone who's looking to up their game on firewood outreach, that's our job. So please come and ask us questions, and we're really here to help. All right, well, with that, I think we're ready to go.
I think so too. Thanks again, everybody, and have a great rest of your week.
Have a good one.